All right, hi everyone. So last week we started taking a look at common pool resources. Hardin feels that common pool resources are always going to be exhausted, leading to a tragedy of the commons. It's because they're non-excludable, so people are going to take more than their fair share, and the solution is to ask the government to step in and to regulate their use. Now, today we're going to take a look at somebody with a different view. David Schmdtz is part of what's called the Arizona School of Liberalism, which is also known as Bleeding Heart Libertarianism, and obviously a libertarian is not going to like Hardin's idea. Schmdtz looks at it like this. The tragedy of the commons comes about because common pool resources are non-excludable. You can't stop other people from using them. So, hey, let's make them excludable. Let's divide them up into private property so you can stop other people from using your share. Now, the tragedy of the commons, it occurs because people want to take more than their fair share. It's rational for them to do so. It's in their best interests because they get to keep all the benefits of what they use, whereas the damage, the depletion of the resource is spread throughout the entire community, so they sustain only a small part of the loss. But if the resource is divided up into privately owned shares, when you use it, you still sustain all the benefits, but you also sustain all the losses privately. So it's in your best interests not to be wasteful. And so that makes it rational for people to preserve the resource and to use it wisely. In economics, damage that's caused to other people or to people in general is called an externality. When it's like a byproduct of your use of a resource or something, which the damage that it causes to other people is called an externality. What Schmdtz wants to do is to internalize externalities, in other words, to deflect them back onto the cause. So Schmdtz's paper, it deals mostly with land because land is a very clear-cut example, but this could be much more broadly applicable, and really it could be applicable in any case where the incentives are strong enough. Now, a lot of the time this isn't going to be as simple as putting up a fence around a piece of land, but it can be done. An example is cap and trade agreements, which essentially grant ownership of a piece of the atmosphere for purposes of pollution. Now, you may question, like, why should we rely on private ownership to make the resource excludable? Why don't we just allow the government to come in and do it and to control people's access to it? And Schmdtz argues that private ownership is just going to be more efficient and therefore better than government regulation. Now, you may have already thought of a lot of objections to Schmdtz. You know, the main one being, look, private ownership doesn't seem like it's any guarantee that resources are going to be used in a sustainable manner. I mean, there's a lot of cases where private ownership didn't guarantee wise use of resources, and it didn't even control environmental damage in any meaningful way or restrict externalities onto the people who were causing them. So we're going to briefly look at that idea today, and on Wednesday we're going to look more closely at some specific cases, because the author that we're going to look at on Wednesday, even though she's pretty sympathetic to Schmdtz's general idea, she thinks he's a little bit carried away with it. And you may have other objections to Schmdtz. You may feel that this kind of enthusiasm for private ownership leads to social inequalities and economic inequalities, or you may just object to it on principle. And these are fair objections that need to be considered. But anyway, we've heard it now from Schmdtz and we've heard from Hardin that are kind of at opposite poles of the debate. So maybe you feel that Hardin had it right, or that Schmdtz had it right, or that, hey, there has to be like another solution that neither one of these guys is thinking about. And, think about those ideas, and we'll talk about them more on Friday.